Welcome back to another episode of Why Do I Do That? Today's question is highly relatable. Why do I prefer being in my masculine and struggle to get into or stay in my feminine? And I guess for those of you who don't know about masculine and feminine, I can give, a little summary, or I'll kind of give a little bit of education as I go as to what I've learned about masculine and feminine. But masculine energy, I guess we've got men would be more dominant in their masculine energy. Ideally, if you think about like the yin yang, men are mostly masculine with a dot of feminine, and women are ideally feminine with a dot of masculine. And what's actually happened is over time with women, I guess, being hurt, there's passed down trauma, but also with women kind of wanting to be able to do what men can do, there has been this shift in almost like epidemic, I want to say, of women who are stuck in their masculine and they're having reproductive issues. They're having issues with control. They're having issues with anxiety. They're having issues with overworking, with burnout. There are books upon books upon books for women who have burnout. And what's essentially happening is women are trying to function the way that men function, but our biology, our makeup is completely different. And so what's happening is women are getting into their masculine energy. And the masculine energy is very much structured. It's routine. It's this not dominating in a negative way, but it's like a really powerful energy. And the feminine energy on the opposite spectrum, on the opposite end of the spectrum, is in flow. There's no routine with the feminine. It's up and it's down and it's here and it's there, and it's very flowy and it's very unstructured and it's very nurturing and caring and loving. Whereas the masculine is protective. They're protective because that's what that's designed to be. And so what's happening is women are moving into their masculine and they're coming up with these really intense behaviors of self-protection, of protecting other people, feeling like they need to save other people, of being hypervigilant and feeling like there are threats all around them, and have become extremely controlling to the point where they're having issues in their relationships because they're pushing these male partners into their feminine by being so dominating in the relationships. I'm pretty sure everyone can probably think to a relationship where the woman dominates the relationship and the man has just become completely submissive. And women, there is a part of them that hates being this way. Every single woman that I work with who is in her masculine and knows she's controlling and protective, and she knows that this is an issue, but she can't stop. So why? Why do we prefer to be, and again, I say we because I've been there. I've been that hard-ass, controlling, structured, dominant, taking on everything, and just, not having any flow or any femininity or any kind of this like flowy, carefree part of me allowed to come out at all. I preferred to be in my masculine because it felt so much safer to be in control. So a lot of the time, not even a lot of the time, every time I work with a woman who is in her masculine and cannot get into her feminine and cannot surrender control and let her partner take over, or just can't surrender full stop and get into the flow, she has had trauma. And whether it's a little t trauma or a big T trauma, it doesn't matter. Lots of little t traumas add up. So a big T trauma would be abuse or an accident or something that leaves you with PTSD. A little T trauma would be things like having parents that worked a lot, or having like micro hurts where all of your needs superficially seemed to be met, but there was still some emotional void there, or so essentially neglect would be a big T trauma, like complete neglect. Emotional neglect would be sort of more of a little T trauma, but over time it can add up to really affect your life. And so this woman prefers to be in her masculine because it feels safer. And if you've had a lot of trauma with men, which again, I have had, and I believe I've spoken about this before, but all of my trauma was with men. I was abused by 2 different men sexually when I was a child. I was bullied by boys in school. It wasn't girls that bullied me, it was boys. And so I learned that in order to be safe, I had to be in my masculine. I couldn't be vulnerable and in my feminine and in my flow. For protection, I would go into my masculine. And so anybody who is in their masculine is protecting themselves. But what from? And this is what I work with all of my clients one-on-one. The question is, what are you protecting yourself from? And in another way I could ask that is, what's not safe? What is it not safe for you to do? And if I say to them, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen if you let go of control and you got into your feminine and you let your partner go into his masculine and you let him kind of start to, not run the house, but take a little bit more of that responsibility to look after you? What would be the worst thing that could happen if you let yourself be looked after? Because that's a huge one. So we go into and find those worst case scenarios of what the worst thing is that could happen. And at the bottom of that, we find this fear or this belief. And it always comes back to, it's not safe. It's not safe because X, Y, Z. And it links back to a past trauma. The other reason is that there are a number of women who fought for, I guess, the rights to have the same rights as men. And when we fight for that, we then have to level up to that. And then we then have to work to that same, if we want the equal pay to men, then we have to do the same job. And I don't believe personally that our bodies are designed to work the way that a man works, to work the hours that a man works, to work the way that a man works. I just don't think that we're the same. We're not biologically. And so I think that women then having to feel like they have to keep up is causing them a lot of hormonal issues, causing them a lot of mental health issues because their body isn't designed to do that. So the reason that we would prefer to be in our masculine is because, one, we think that we have to. We think that we have to in order to keep up. We think that we have to in order to be safe, in order to protect ourselves, in order to be ready, because masculine is also very protective, as I said, and in control. And so we then are feeling like we're ahead of what's gonna come at us. It's like there's this fear that if we tap into our feminine and we're just in the flow of life, something could hit us at any moment. And this is the same reason why people continue to stay in the trauma cycle. I call it the struggle loop. And essentially what happens is someone starts to feel better and they start to relax and they start to feel calm and everything feels good in their life. And then they create chaos. And the reason that they create chaos is because they want to be prepared. They're activating this part of themselves or this part of their brain that needs to be ready for anything to come at them at any time. And if you're in your feminine and you're in your flow and you're not protected, then you're not ready for the threats. So again, we have to unpack, what's the threat? Is there actually a current threat or is it a past threat? And we have to look at the traumas that would be keeping us in that masculine. It's also a really high energy. We get a lot done. Like when I'm in my masculine, I feel like I can do anything. When I'm in my feminine, I love life. When I'm in my feminine, I'm like, oh, let's go here and let's do that. And that feels really good. And it's all about what feels good. That feels good. That feels, and you're really in your body. Masculine energy, I feel, is more in your head. And it's more like, what are we going to get done today? What's next on the agenda? How much can I achieve today? It's very planned. It's very logical. Whereas the feminine is a little bit more woo-woo, a little bit more free. And so it feels like I need a lot more of that masculine to be able to get things done, especially women in business. Like, I feel like if I was in my feminine all the time, to where I would like to be, I wouldn't get anything done. So the best advice that I ever got was to use your masculine to allocate periods of time where you can be in your feminine, which sounds crazy because so many women can just be in their feminine, and they are. But if you are one of those women who is in a career or working, there is a level of needing that masculine there. So you use your masculine to go, okay, every Wednesday, I am not going to put anything in my calendar, and that's going to be the day where I feel into my body and I get into my feminine and I just do what I feel like I want to do. And I just let the wind take me wherever I go that day, and I just stay completely in my feminine. I don't plan, I don't schedule, I don't put any pressure on myself. I just allow. Or it could be every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, or every morning from 6 or 7, whatever it is. You use that masculine, logical part of yourself to schedule in those times where you can just be that feminine. And the practice of doing that is going to allow you to build on and to feel comfortable being in that feminine to the point where it will come more naturally. And to be honest, this is something that I feel I still go back and forth with. I spent a lot of time healing the feminine and feeling just safe to go into it, safe to be vulnerable, safe to open up, safe to receive, safe to be looked after, safe to just go with the flow of things and to not have things planned. Took so much work to get to that point that I probably spent, I want to say, like 2 years almost completely in my feminine. And and it felt really good, and life was so amazing and chill, and I felt really vibrant, but I didn't get a lot done in my business. I didn't, and I missed the masculine part of me that gets shit done, that's structured and pushes. And so I'm aware when I'm doing it now, and I will flick back in and I'll be like, oh, I'm too far now. I'm really structured, really regimented. I haven't had any flow or done anything for myself or whatever. And I will notice that, and I will try and integrate it back in. But I still go through periods where I go so deep into one side, and I'm still working on that balance between being able to blend the two together. And I find that structuring really helps. So the other thing to kind of look into, which I have obviously done a lot, is, as I said, all of the wounds that cause you to do that, because all the traumas that cause you to do that, because mine is heavily trauma based, and that was where the pattern started. And even though I feel like I've healed a lot of my trauma, I still have the patterns going on in my life. So looking at where did you learn that you had to be protective and that you had to be controlling, and deep diving into why you have to do that, where that happened, where that started. And a good journaling exercise would be, if I was to go into my feminine, I mentioned this before, if I was to go into my feminine, what's the worst thing that could happen? And you'll uncover a number of different beliefs when you just really free journal and start answering that question out. And for me, it was always like really logical things like, oh, I would lose my business because I would have no passion, which obviously didn't happen. But I would have this thing of I'll lose my business. I'll just be too airy-fairy. People won't like me. I'll forget things. There was all of these fears that came up with going into my feminine, which weren't actually true, but were beliefs that I had created to sort of keep me in that masculine, to keep me safe. And I think what happens as well is there's such a narrative out there of that men aren't safe. And we see that in the news, and in reports that are being pumped out at us at domestic violence, and how many women are killed per year by partners, and how women are mugged and raped and attacked down the streets and things like that. And although that is definitely happening and it is a problem, it is also not the majority of men. And so what happens is we're staying in our masculine to protect ourselves from the minority and from the very small chance that something like this could happen to us, when in reality, most of the men in our life aren't going to do that. And so we have to realize that, because what happens is, I should have prefaced this, but like what happens is when you're in your masculine, you naturally will push away men in your life, because there's this energy of like, I don't need you. I can do it myself. I'll look after myself. I don't need your help. And they can become like real man haters, even like towards their partners and just in general, because they're so in the masculine themselves that they've like absorbed this persona of like, of the man, of like, I don't need you. I can be both. I'm a woman, but I can protect myself. I don't need you. And that again comes from wounding and from messaging of like that men are abusive and men are toxic and men are XYZ. And obviously I have spoken about that on here, and I've been abused by men. I just told you I've been bullied by men. But I still have done a lot of work to see that there are so many good men in the world, and that isn't the normal. And I had to do that work to be able to tell myself that it was okay to jump out of that masculine and to stop protecting myself from every man, because I was at the point where I was like going to the servo or getting served at the chemist or any man, and I was looking at them thinking, I wonder if he's a pedophile. I wonder if he's raped somebody. I wonder if because it was such a strong message. It just kept me in that masculine. So you have to do a level of work around men being safe and around what your beliefs are about men. Because if you're putting yourself into that masculine, it is most commonly to protect yourself from men. And I would argue that most extreme feminists have had some intense wounding by men, and the messages that they're getting out there, some of them are really good, but it's all about where it's coming from. If it's coming from a place of wounding, the message is going to be a little bit wishy-washy. If it's coming from clear, direct, like, okay, I've done the healing work, this can be true and this can be true. Yes, women need XYZ, but also women are different in this way. So, you can have that more logical side, whereas if you have been wounded and hurt and you're stuck in your masculine, the message is just dun, 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 dun. It's very controlling. It's very intense. So some of the practices that I like to do to get into feminine is really, it's anything to do with getting into your body, because like I said, feminine is like body, masculine is logical, it's thinking. And so I do anything I can to come back into my body, which for me is like breath work, closing my eyes, breathing, focusing on my breath and feeling the sensations in my body. Because when I'm in my masculine, I can completely detach from my body. I could work for like 6 hours on the computer and not even realize that my back is in agony because I'm so focused on what I'm doing. So it's coming back into your body and connecting with your body, feeling your body. Movement is the next one, like dance. Go to a dance class or just dance around the lounge room, shake your hips, move your body. Moving your body is going to bring you back into your feminine and back into your body and back into feeling. The other part to this is that I feel like feminine is gentle and it's slow and it's got patience. Masculine is more fast-paced, more rigid, more structured. So looking at ways that you can bring slowness and gentleness in. So where can you sort of ease up on yourself in your expectations around what you're going to achieve in a day, but also where can you just go so much slower? Where can you just completely slow it down? Like, can you just eat your breakfast outside in the sun, just one slow bite at a time? Those are things that are going to help bring you back into your feminine. And if you try and do that, if you try and dance and you feel like you just can't even move your body, you dance for 2 seconds and you go, you know what, I need to do the washing. You're in your masculine. If you try and sit down and slowly, calmly eat your breakfast and just listen to the birds, and you sit down and you think of a million other things you could do, or you feel really agitated by doing this, you're in your masculine. There's some blocks there that are stopping you from being able to tap into that slowness and that feminine. And it's going to be trauma and it's going to be wounds that you need to dive into and have a look at. So we don't just go into our masculine and stay in our masculine and end up with these hormonal issues and burnout and everything for no reason. There is an underlying cause, is always my message for everything, because it's true. There's always a reason why you're doing what you're doing. And so if you are somebody who is chronically in your masculine, controlling, feeling, and this is like a toxic masculine. There's healthy masculine and toxic masculine, which is a whole nother episode, but this is quite toxic masculine behavior, the controlling and the dominating. But you're too structured, for instance, and too narrow-minded in one way, you need to start looking at this masculine feminine. I have a program called Rise where I unpack healthy masculine, unhealthy, healthy feminine, unhealthy feminine. We talk about all of this and so much more. It's a 7-week course going through the 7 chakras. We talked about feminine and masculine when we went into sex and pleasure, and we go through everything. It's a huge course. That's a really good one if you are interested in learning more about the feminine and masculine. It's called Rise. You can purchase it through my website. If you know somebody who is stuck in their masculine and needs to hear this, please send it on.